Thank you, Lord Jesus, for leading me to do a video. Just talking about global warming and the ice age versus ice ages, and things like that. And I just ask that your words would flow down from the Spirit, from the Holy Spirit, and speak through me. I ask that this would reach many people, and that it would also change the hearts of these global warming activists. Maybe there would be somebody that would see this, Lord Jesus, and it would just change their perspective. And it's in your mighty name. Amen. So this morning, I wake up and I'm getting my coffee. In fact, I have it right now. And, I'm spending some time with the Lord, and the Lord, tells me to, make a video. In fact, like, he also wants me to talk about the dire wolves, the so-called, dire wolves. And so that's why I paused there for a second, because he was, you know, sometimes he goes, hey, I want to, you to get on and talk about this. And then when you do, sometimes he might add something else to talk about. And so, anyways, that's like God heavenly put that on my heart to, make, today about that. And again, I'm not a scientist. I'm not in the science field, although that would be really, really cool. That's just unrealistic because I don't have a degree in that field, although I'm very, very interested in that field. So I still do a lot of my own research. And so I of course watch a lot of videos, and so I watch a lot of videos from creationists, and then so but then from there I do my own research, and the Lord just showed me something else. So I'm going to grab something real fast. Hold on. All right. So what I grabbed was, a little, map of the world of what I, believe from, me doing, my research and my thinking of, the what I believe the world would have looked like before Noah's flood. And I will get to that. That's something else that I'm going to talk about. And I might also, so this might actually get get to be pretty long. Hopefully I don't talk too long on each topic, but I believe the Lord is also wanting me to talk about the book of Enoch. Again, I have to get my notes from that, so hold on. Okay. Hopefully, the Lord doesn't put anything else. If He does, He does, but this is going to be a range of topics. Thank you, Lord Jesus. So, and this is going to be the uncut version. I mean, I not that I can't edit video. I know how to do that. I do have videos on YouTube where I'm using a camera, and I do have edited before, but I just decided to go back to my phone. And I do have an editing thing on my phone, although I don't like to use it for editing, big videos. But I can do that. It's not that I can't. But anyways, so this is going to be obviously. So range of topics. Let's go over the topics. We have the Book of Enoch. I'm going to talk about chapter 72. I'm going to talk about the pattern of the sun. And with that, the months and the time. I'm going to talk about what I have found, from just, from the research that I've done, from looking at Google Earth, and then also just thinking, using logic to kind of also just using logic with it and going, well, okay, I can see where this would have happened, but I don't really see how, this would have, and, making all of how the earth, my thoughts of how the earth was back before the flood. And then also going to talk about the direwolves, going to talk about global warming, and the ice ages, and how the ice ages, well, actually, I do not believe in multiple ice ages, but I do know that these secular scientists believe in multiple ice ages. So I might, use their argument and I'm going to use their argument against them is what I'm going to do. But I don't just know, first and foremost, I don't believe in the multiple ice ages. I only believe in one. But yeah, like, I'm going to talk like there was multiple to kind of use the argument against the secular scientists. So I'm going to talk about that, and then that's going to tie in with global warming and things like that. So a range of topics. So this could get long. It's already 10 minutes. So let me get started. And thank you for staying in the intro so I can explain everything that I'm going to talk about. So let me just start off with the dire wolves. So you probably heard by now, and there's probably 10 billion YouTube videos about the dire wolf. I don't know exactly, that's just a number I threw out. But they claim that they resurrected the dire wolf, right? Now there are some mixed thoughts about this. There's obviously some people more on the Christian side that go, well, they shouldn't be resurrecting animals that were extinct and this and that. And I'm going to circle back around to that because I have a different point of view. So I'm going to circle back around to that. Are these actually dire wolves? Are they dire wolves? So they took some kind of bone and they, took, I don't know exactly what it was that they did. They took, I'm just going to say it in the term that you and I would be able to relate. I'm not going to use the scientific terms for this. I'm just going to simply say genes. I know there's, that's not technically the, correct term for this, but, in a way, to simplify it, because I don't really know what it's called. I don't really know exactly what they did, but to simplify it for you and I, they took genes from the direwolf bone and genes from the gray wolf, right? And they scientifically, made what they call a direwolf, but would that be the definition of a direwolf? You have 50% genes from a direwolf and then 50% genes from the gray wolf. Does that identify as, no, that doesn't identify, that's not a dire wolf. That's a half breed. That's a mixed breed. That's a hybrid. That's a hybrid. You got to understand that is 100% hybrid. It's 50-50. So and does it prove evolution? Absolutely not, because it's still a what? It's still a wolf. Dogs cannot breed with cats and create something else, so therefore they have not proven evolution. They will say that they have proven evolution with these things, saying, well, this bird, flying to this island and then changing, and I don't know what the name of this bird is, but there's a bird that thousands of years ago, so to speak, flew to a island, like a tropical island or some kind of island, and they, over time, they kind of, like, their wings got smaller, and so now they're unable to fly. And all they did, the only thing that happened there is that the bird adapted to that environment. It does not prove evolution. It's still a bird. It's still from the same species of bird. So, it didn't go from dinosaur to bird or from bear to bird. Like, this bird that they claim proves evolution, it just went from, like, it's still the same bird. It's still the same bird, even. Like, it just, the wings got smaller so that it couldn't fly, and it is now able to swim. So it's able to breathe under, like the penguin. Like the penguin, how it gets its food is it dives underneath the water and it, eats, fish. And that's what this bird on this particular island that flew there a couple thousand years ago, whatever, it adapted to that environment, and so therefore now it, that's all. But it's still a bird. They do not have evidence of a whale going from a whale to a bear. In fact, a whale is like, no, 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 no. Because a whale, how do you get different whales? So you got the killer whale, you got this whale, you got this whale, you got these several different whales, right? It's because of one species of whale mated with another species of whale, and you get a hybrid. You created a hybrid, but that's all whales can create, is if one species of whale mates with another species of whale, excuse me, you're going to get a hybrid. That's all. Like, that's all they can create, is different variations of hybrids. They you're not going to get a bear out of that. And I think they know that, but they're so set on trying to, get us to believe in this lie that they're locked in. And so there many people will, dismiss what I just said, but I mean, that's a clear fact. That is a clear fact. A bear can make, like, one species of bear mating with another species of bear, you're going to get a hybrid, but it's still going to be a bear. And that's something that we know. But these secular scientists, for whatever reason, they see that as evidence of evolution, but that's not evidence of evolution. So, again, is the dire wolf, is it back? No. However, I do believe that if the scientists took the hybrid breed that they, birthed into this world, I do believe if they, take the hybrid and did the same process with this, the scientific process, I do believe that they can eventually either get something around, I don't know, 90, maybe 95, maybe even 98% direwolf. But they also probably could get something that eventually could be 100% direwolf. I do believe that if they did the same process over and over and over with the hybrid, do the same process, you're going to get another hybrid, but you're going to get one that's probably 60-40, right? Instead of 50-50, it's now 60-40. Then, breed it again with this, it's going to, keep going up. And then eventually, you would have to, I think, and yes, I could be completely wrong because I'm not a scientist, whatever. But I'm just applying logic. If you take a white person and a black person, and yeah, call me racist if you want, call me racist, I don't care. This is simple fact. You take white person, black person, they mate like male, female, they mate, their offspring is going to be a skin tone that's somewhere in the middle. Now, if their offspring, let's say their offspring mated with, like obviously someone from the opposite sex, and that was dark skinned, their offspring is going to what? Like now you go from having offspring that was, 50-50 to offspring that has a skin tone of 60-40, right? Like it's not, exactly as dark as this coffee mug, but it's going to, like, again, you take a white person, black person from the opposite sex, they mate, their offspring is going to be a skin tone that's in between, right? And then that offspring mates with another offspring from, like a skin tone that is, black. And now, that's just simple logic. I mean, that's pretty logic. So yeah, I do believe that you can bring the dire wolf back if you do that logic. So now to discuss, thank you, Lord Jesus, for helping me remember. Now let's discuss those that, feel like we shouldn't be bringing back animals that have been extinct. Let me just go to Genesis real quick. God created Adam to do what? To be the caretaker of the world. So humans were meant to be the caretaker of this world, right? Like before sin entered, we were the caretaker of all the animals, and we were the caretaker of all the plants, the caretaker of all the animals. And so that was supposed to be our job. And so now we have sin that entered the world, and humans, well, now we have predators, right? So now we have, certain predators that hunt, right? You have predators that hunt. So, yeah, a species could go extinct from another animal being its predator. They could go extinct that way, or they can go extinct because they have humans that would be the predator. And that's the reason why we have hunting laws. And that's the reason why we have seasons for hunting, is because we don't want any more animals to go extinct because they are over hunted. And so, yes, animals like the eagle, you know, like animals are, they don't have, like, they're animals. So they don't think like we do. They just go after their prey, you know, and so that's always going to happen, right? Animals are always, going to be like, oh, hey, I'm hungry. Let me go after X, Y, and Z, right? And let me kill, this animal or that animal. So yes, animals are always going to, hunt other animals, and they could, probably go. However, it's, pretty healthy for animals to, because you think about how an animal can be a predator to another species. Well, if there weren't, there could be an overabundance of that species. So, that's always going to happen. And that's actually pretty healthy. So that's why, you know, you can't really do anything for the animals over hunting a certain species. That you can't really do. But we are humans, and so I do believe us as human beings, as caretakers of this world, we do need to be more careful, right? Like, we do need to not be over hunting certain game, or we need to protect the wildlife. I do believe, because we're supposed to be caretakers of this world. So that's a really good thing that humans can do, is not is set laws up to not overhunt, certain species, and then also laws so that we don't overfish, or over catch a certain amount of fish. Another thing that I believe that we could do as humans, as those that are in the science field, one of the things that they can do, or that they should do, I believe, is resurrect the animals that have been extinct. I I simply would I would love to see the woolly mammoth come back. Like a lot of the animals that lived during the Ice Age, I would love to see those animals come back. And I would love to see possibly see the dinosaurs. Although that might be, I don't particularly know how good that would be for, um, I just don't know. But that would still be exciting. But, other than the dinosaurs, it just would, I think it would be a really good idea for the scientists to try to bring more animals that were extinct back, because we're supposed to be the caretaker, and I know that there are other things that could play into a animal's extinction, right? But for the most part, it was because they were overhunted by humans. Dinosaurs went extinct because they were overhunted by humans. And before you call me crazy, they have found in caves, they have found drawings of people riding dinosaurs, of human beings riding dinosaurs inside these caves. So that probably means that this world, for one, isn't as old as we think, and humans and dinosaurs were in this world at the same time at one time, before the extinction. And which means that, yes, obviously, if there are ancient drawings of humans riding dinosaurs, that means that they were hunted by humans and therefore they went extinct due to humans hunting them. And so many of the Ice Age animals probably also, now, yeah, some of them went extinct due to the Ice Age, happening and not having the vegetation that they needed and things like that. But I can almost imagine that many probably went extinct because they were overhunted and things like that. So if we are the caretakers of this world, and going back to Genesis, if we are the caretakers of this world and we have the science to bring back the animals that have gone extinct, I believe we should. We should be trying to do that. And I believe that is a very good idea. So now, okay, there are many, both the creationists and the secular scientists, which would be evolutionists, they both agree that the Earth at one time was one giant peninsula, and I agree with that. I definitely agree. So both the creationists and the evolutionists agree that it was one big peninsula or continent. Excuse me, I don't know why I said, but continent, one giant continent, and that it, the continents split. That's true. We find that in Scripture. We actually find that in Genesis, when it talks about the flood. And you can go look at Genesis. I urge you to look at Genesis. And you will see where the earth split. And actually, when you look on Google Earth, you can see where that split. And I'm gonna put that down. So you have the Americas, right? You have the Americas, and then you have Europe and Africa, right? And in between that, you can see where it's split. So picture this with me. Picture the continents together as one. Picture them together as one big continent. Okay, did the split happen sideways? Did it happen horizontally, right? Or did the split happen vertically, right? You can see where the continent split, and the split was vertical. The split was vertical. It wasn't, and so if you were to line up where it split, it carves out perfectly carves out Europe, Africa, and the Americas. I wish I had a map for you. And actually, I kind of do. So, I don't know if you can see this or not, but this is kind of where. So, just picture the Americas, together. All the continents together. The split would have happened up here, and it would have happened, you know, vertically, not horizontal. And you can see here where it matches that, right? It matches. And this here matches matches that. So, and then also that matches that, and that matches, or this, like it all, like, so this little hump here matches that hump. That little dip, it matches that. So what I'm saying is, what I see is that split happen. Is what I'm saying is, from what I see, because all of these match, right? It completely 100% matches that split. That's where the earth split. So what I am seeing is that is where the earth split, and from it splitting like that, that's how Africa was, that hump from Africa. That's what I'm saying is, this hump here, well, that's probably how that hump got there from Africa. Like how Africa has that, right? You can see it go like that. Well, you see the same thing here, is it takes on that, and so from what I'm seeing is that is how the continents, Africa and the Americas, were formed, pretty much. So that's what I'm saying is it looks like where that split, that's how the continents got there. So from that, picture this with me. From that, you can see where the continents split. The continents split. Okay. But I don't see anything else happen. Right? And I don't have the map of what they say the earth looked like. That's where, like, so both the creationists and the evolutionists, they believe that that there was one big continent. I also believe that. I also believe that. I just don't believe, or I do not see where the one big continent would have been laid out the same way. Because, and that's one piece of evidence, is that split. Like, if you follow that split, that will tell you that that's where the continents broke apart. And again, that split didn't happen horizontally, it happened vertically, right? So they say that, over time after the continent split, you had continents, that shifted. But here's something that they're not thinking about or considering. Is one, they're not considering where that split, and that it split vertically, right? They're not really considering that. Like, they can see where it split, but see, if it was to split more, vertical, the continents would look different. Like, Africa would look, like it was laying on its side versus horizontal, right? Um, and Africa and the Americas and Africa are both horizontal. Exactly how that split takes place, horizontal. And everything lines up to how that split. And so that, for one, they're not, both the creationists and the evolutionists, they're not really, they're not looking to where that split happened. The second thing that they're not thinking about, and this is, if you think about this, it's gonna blow your mind, right? What would happen to the ocean floor if a continent turned? Like, if a continent was to turn, what would happen to the ocean floor? What would happen to the ocean floor is that the earth that would be holding the continent up, right? That, like, so if a continent were to turn, that would easily cause the earth at the bottom of the ocean floor to break. So the earth that is sitting on the ocean floor is what is holding the continents up in place, right? Well, if you were to turn a continent, the bottom, the ocean floor, so picture this desk as the ocean floor, and my hand was the earth that was connected to the ocean floor. And so obviously you have the ocean, right? This was the earth, and then boom, you have a continent. Well, let's say you turned that continent. You turn that continent. You're turning that well, what's happening to the bottom of the ocean floor? It would have to do this. It would break. It would crack. It would, like, there's no way, and this is just simply logic. It would simply just, because as it would turn, that entire continent would break off of the ocean floor. It would have to. The continent, the earth that is beneath the ocean that is holding the continent up, there's no other, like, it would have to break off. And as it broke off, it would just sink. That continent would just sink. It's just simple logic. Like, when you think about it, it's just simple logic. I don't know how else to explain it to you, but in the desert, you have these wonderful, beautiful sand arches, right? Well, what happened? And then, so you have a flat land, and then you have these wonderful sand arches. You have wonderful, like, layers of rock, right? All throughout the desert. What would happen if you took these beautiful, beautiful rock arches, these rock arches that were connected to the ground, and you turned them? You turned them so that they were they were once facing this way, and now they're facing this way because you turned. What would happen? What would have to happen in order for you to turn those wonderful rock arches that are typically found in the desert? You would have to break them off from the ground. Like, you would have to, like, as if someone was strong enough to turn them, what would happen is the platform that was connected to the ground would start breaking, and it would break off, and then eventually, boom, it would crumble, right? And that's what I'm saying, is likewise, if a continent was to turn, don't you think the continent would just break off, crumble, fall into the ocean? That's another thing that both the creationists and the evolutionists have not thought about, is that if a continent were to turn, the bottom would snap off, it would crumble, and so there's something wrong with their map. There's something wrong with how they believe, like their map for this. So again, I'm not saying that, because obviously this world was one giant continent. There's no argument there. But their map layout of what this one continent would have looked like before um, before splitting is a little off, is what I'm saying. It is, when you follow the evidence, when you follow the two things that I just showed you, you start to see that the map that they created for this one giant landmass is a little off. And I'm just saying it because they not only do they say that the earth split and the continents split apart, they will show a diagram where over time the continents are shifting. They're like over time, like Africa and Europe and the Americas, how the continents over time they, shifted. They shifted from this position to this position, like over time they have the diagram where the continents kind of shifted. That's not what I find. You don't find that, and when you apply logic, when you apply those two things that I just showed you, you do not find how the continents shifted over time and, came to rest where they are today. Like, you just don't find that. That's what I'm telling you, is I don't see that at all. And so what I do see is the continent splitting. That's the only thing that I see. I see that there was a split, and because of that split, throughout time, the continents got further and further apart. Other than that, they just split. So what I did is I drew a map of what I believe the globe would have looked like back, and you gotta picture this as a round globe. So I you just gotta picture this as a globe. Picture it as, and I wish I had my globe here, but picture it as a globe, not as a flat. And so that's what I was doing, was I was, creating a map that would, if it was a globe, like how would it look like if, you drew this on a globe instead of a flat piece of paper. So but if you can focus on the middle here, with Australia being right here, obviously that's more what the I believe, like what I have found in my research and my logical thinking. This is the diagram that I came up with, is just simply the earth split. You can see the split here. And then what happened was you got the split that happened right here. It goes boom. That's what happened. You get the split. Antarctica, I do believe, would have been down here, and it would have just, Antarctica would have broken off. You can see where Antarctica would have broken off and moved down here. That's, you know, the that's the same thing that both creationists and the evolutionists believe, is that Antarctica and Australia broke off from the other continents and they just moved into their position, right? And the same thing is they say that the Americas split off from the rest of the world and kind of went, you know, that's the same thing, except for the only thing that is different, and I already explained why I believe that. The only thing that I have different is the location of Australia. The location of Antarctica is actually, I think it's actually pretty close to their location of where they place Antarctica. It's just, I see how at one point, so see this little horn up here, this little U shape, and that little horn? Well, you can easily match it with the little islands from North America, from Alaska. Like you have Alaska, and then you have islands that breach out that almost come to Asia, right? That don't necessarily touch Asia, but they come pretty close to touching Asia, right? Well, that little U shape, obviously you can see that one time it probably was attached to North America. Probably was attached at one time to North America and just broke off. And when it broke off, it sank to its location of where it is today. And seriously, that's the only thing that I see that is different. And so what I would like for the evolutionist community and the creationist community to do is maybe get out of your box thinking, and maybe, you know, use some logic, add logic to your your thinking, and I'm not saying that I'm 100% correct. I'm not saying that. But when you take what I did, when you think about the logic, it's just not possible that the continents would have shifted throughout time. It's clear that the continents broke, and some broke off and sank to their position, and others just broke and split. But that's all that happened. That's all that I see happened. I just don't see where I really do not see at all where they would have shifted. So maybe their diagram, maybe it's time to change that diagram. So I don't know. Hopefully this will reach a scientist, and maybe they can make, I don't know. So if you're still with me, thank you that you're still with me. We're over an hour in. The Book of Enoch, and I'm trying to, oh no, not the Book of Enoch, not yet. I'm going to save that for last. I knew there was something that I was missing. Global warming and the Ice Age. So it doesn't matter whether you believe that there are or were multiple ice ages or just one. Now, again, I only believe that there are one ice age. There was only one ice age. However, for the sake of the argument, let's just, use our imagination. Let me use my imagination. If there were multiple ice ages, so one thing that you have to consider is the reason why you cannot take ice samples and date those is because Antarctica was at one time a tropical island. It was a tropical island. And how did Antarctica become ice? Because of the ice age or ice ages, right? So with Antarctica being a tropical island, and let's say there's multiple ice ages, well, that means it's a tropical island, an ice age comes, and it's going to freeze Antarctica. It's going to completely freeze Antarctica, right? But then later, it's going to start when the globe starts to warm up again, the ice from Antarctica is going to do what? It's going to start melting. So then it melts, and then it becomes a tropical island once again, right? So if there was another ice age, it's going to freeze Antarctica again, right? But then, you know, for it to become a tropical island once more, the temperature would have to do what? The temperature would have to warm in order to melt the ice. The temperature would have to, the Earth's temperature, the Earth's climate would have to warm in order for the ice to melt. So go back to where I said the Antarctica being a tropical island, there's an ice age, right? Well, how warm do you think the Earth's climate would have been before the ice age? It would have had, like, for Antarctica to be a warm climate before freezing over, that's pretty obvious that it would be a pretty warm climate. So that's evidence right there that the climate before the ice age, or the climate before multiple ice ages, would have been warmer than it is today. It would have been warmer than it is today. Like, we all know that the center of the earth is the warmest place, right? And as you go north, it kind of gets colder and colder. Like, the climate gets colder and colder. When you go south, the climate gets colder and colder. And we all know that to be a fact. So going back to before the ice age, or before any one of those ice ages, with Antarctica being a warm climate for a tropical island, right? A warm enough climate to have trees, plants, many wildlife. You know how hot the equator would have been? You know how warm the climate, the equator would have been? Very, very warm. A lot warmer than today. And I know that, oh, there's scientists that can so-called, date these ice cores, and from these ice cores you can see where the Earth's climate would have, spiked and all that. And, like, well, here's why that's not evidence. The reason why that's not evidence is because you can't even date. You cannot use those ice cores like you can with a tree and date the rings, right? You can't do that. Well, I'm going to tell you why you cannot do that. What happens when you have water, right? You have a lake, and winter comes, right? And so every time winter comes, you have lakes that freeze over, that become ice. And the colder the winter is, the thicker the ice. That's simple logic. Very simple logic. The colder a winter is, the thicker the ice is going to be. So that's one reason right there that you cannot date the ice cores. You can't date the ice cores. And then the second reason why you can't date the ice cores is because if, in fact, we've had multiple ice ages, well, those ice ages would have, frozen the Antarctica, and then the Earth would have, the climate would have gotten warmer and warmer and would have melted the ice. So you would have one ice age, and then the climate would have gotten warmer and would have melted that ice back, and the Antarctica would have became a tropical island once more. So you have, let's say, a period of, and I don't know how long, I'm just going to say, let's say you have a period of 1,000 years, right, of Antarctica as this nice tropical island, right? And then an ice age comes. Well, eventually, because after an ice age happens, the Earth's climate is going to warm back up. And so when the Earth's climate warms back up, it's going to melt that ice, and eventually we're going to get back to a tropical island. So now you have another Antarctica full of life, maybe 4,000 years, maybe 2,000 years before another ice age. Did you catch what I just said? Before another ice age. So you have one ice age that comes, Antarctica is frozen, it gets melted because the climate heats up, and then you have another ice age. And so the Antarctica freezes again, but then it melts, and then it freezes again because another ice age, and then it melts. Like, if there were multiple ice ages, Antarctica is going to freeze, and then it's going to melt. It's going to freeze, melt, freeze, melt, freeze, melt. For every time there was an ice age, Antarctica is going to freeze. And then every time the Earth getting a warmer climate, that ice is going to thaw. Where is that ice going? That ice is thawing, it's melting, it's going into the ocean, it's disappearing. So then when another ice age comes, it freezes again. And then the climate gets warmer, the ice melts, it disappears again. So if you do that, I don't know, like say 5 different times, you see where I'm going with this? So each time Antarctica freezes over, it's not a new layer of ice. It's like the ice is completely new. Not a new layer, not a new layer of ice, completely new ice. So that's the reason why you cannot date the ice cores. Those 2 reasons are the 2 reasons why you cannot date the ice cores, is because one, we all know the colder it gets, the thicker the ice is going to be. And so, because Antarctica is a very cold climate, well, the ice is going to be really thick. Really, really thick. Like, how thick do you think the ice is going to be on Antarctica because it's freezing, right? Antarctica is very freezing. Like, the climate on Antarctica right now is very cold. So, taking that logic that I told you about what ice does, ice thickens the colder it gets. It thickens the colder it gets. So, the ice on Antarctica is very, very thick because it's very, very cold. And then the second reason why is because, well, if you had multiple ice ages, it would have became a sheet of ice. That sheet of ice would have melted. Another ice age would have became, like, it would have been a sheet of ice, a whole new sheet of ice, and then, so you cannot date the ice cores. You just simply cannot date the ice cores. So, and again, if Antarctica, and this is the last thing that I'm going to say before we talk about the Book of Enoch. So, if Antarctica was once a tropical island, again, the center of the earth would have been a very warm climate. Like, the earth's climate would have, like, it's a no-brainer. It's simply a no-brainer. You don't have to be a scientist to figure this out, that the earth's climate would have been hotter. It would have been warmer than it is today, when Antarctica, being a tropical island filled with trees and lots of wildlife, right? Earth, the rest of, like, once you got closer and closer to that equator, it would have been, the whole entire Earth's climate would have been warmer. That's just, again, that's more logic. It just, you gotta go, I mean, that just makes sense. So when they say that the earth was never, the climate was never as warm as it that's Nope, that's not true. There's no evidence of that. In fact, it was warmer because in order for Antarctica to be a nice tropical island with lots of life means that the entire Earth's climate would have been warmer. It would have been warmer than today. So that's just using your brain. So now the book of Enoch, talk about the calendar, the pattern of the sun, how many days are in a month, how many months there are, and things like that, and time. What you see here is a calendar that I created based on reading Enoch chapter 72. So let me open up to Enoch chapter 72. It's 72 through Enoch chapter 72 through Enoch chapter through 76, 77. Mainly through like chapter well, basically, actually, it's, starting in chapter 72, it talks about the sun, and it gives you the account of the sun's pattern. And so that, first of all, you have to understand that Enoch is telling us this is the pattern of the sun. That's one thing that you have to understand. So this pattern that we find in chapter 72, Enoch, we find that 30, 30, 31. So write that down on a piece of paper. 30, 30, 31. You see that pattern. Because it talks about 30 days and then like 30 more days and then 31 days, right? So that's the pattern, that's the sun's pattern, is 30 days, and then you count 30. So what I'm going to show you is like when I show you the calendar that I made, I'm going to show you where, like a date where I circled a certain date, right? And then from that, I applied this pattern. From this certain date, I counted 30 days and circled that day. And then I counted 30 more days and then I circled that day. And then I counted 31 days and I circled that day. So the book of Enoch in the first month, on the 13th day of that month, the sun, shines daily longer, right? And for 30 days, right? For 30 days. So again, so you take the first month and you circle, and so you're going to have to create a calendar. You cannot use the calendar that we use. It doesn't work. I've tried it. I've also tried it with the leap year. It doesn't work. But you can do this pattern through the calendar that you create or the Jewish calendar, which I can't remember. Like, the Jewish calendar has 13 months with, I can't remember if it's 29 days or 28 days each. That I can't remember right now. But the Jewish calendar has 364 days. That's as many days, just as many days as Enoch says there are. So we use a 365 day calendar. The Jewish calendar uses 364 days, and so does Enoch. Enoch uses 364 days. Although he says that there is 1 month of 29 days. Just 1 month of 29 days, right? So, how many days of 30? How many days of 30 and how many days of 31? Because Enoch does suggest that there is 1 month of 29. And there are, then from that, there are, certain months with 30 days and certain months with 31. So Enoch says that there are 364 days just like the Jewish calendar. What's different is that there is 1 month of 29, and what is different is that there are certain months of 30 and certain months of 31. Well, just like our calendar, we have certain months of 30 days, and then we have other months of 31 days, and we have 1 month of 28, right? But what is the difference? Well, Enoch has 1 month of 29, not 28. Enoch has 6 months of 30 days, not 4. 6. So in our calendar, we have 4 months of 30 days. Enoch has 6 months of 30 days. And so that's what would be what is different. Another thing that is different is we have 7 months of 31 days, and Enoch has 5, just 5 months of 31. So create a calendar. Create 6 months of 30 days, 5 months of 31 days, and 1 month of 29. Start the first month with 30 days, then the second month 31. Do 30, 31, 30, 31 all the way to the last month. Then the last month should be 29. So when you create your calendar, again, it should be 30 days. The first month should be 30 days. The second month should be 31 days. The third month should be 30 days. And the fourth month should be 31 days. And you do that repeatedly until you get to the 12th month of the year. And the 12th month would be 29 days. So hopefully you are following along. And so because I already mentioned the very first month, the 13th day, so circle the 13th day. Once you have your calendar, once you've created your calendar, I want you to circle the 13th day. Because Enoch says that on the 13th day of that month, that's when the sun gets daily longer and the night becomes nightly shorter. So then once you have the 13th day circled, do this. Count 30 days. Count 30 days. If you count 30 days, you come to the 13th day of that second month. Circle it. That's when, again, the sun is going to become, let me get my notes out. That's when the sun is going to again get daily longer and nightly shorter. The second month. So then you count 30 more days. See the pattern? 30, 30. So you just counted 30 days. Now you're going to count 30 more days. Circle it. That's where the sun is again going to be daily longer. It's going to become daily longer, nightly shorter on that day of that month. So then, if you follow Enoch's pattern, 30, 30, 31, well, now you just counted 30, and then you circled that day, you counted another 30, and you circled that day. Well, now you're counting 31 days, and you're going to circle it. And in that month, the day is going to become daily shorter, and the night nightly longer. So you have the first 3 months. The first month becomes daily longer and nightly shorter. Then the second month, again, it becomes daily longer and nightly shorter. Then the third month is again going to become daily longer, nightly shorter. But then once you get to the fourth month, that is when it's going to start becoming daily shorter, nightly longer. So then when you get to the fifth month, again, it becomes shorter. When you get to the sixth month, again, it becomes shorter. And when you get to I forgot what month I was on. When you get to the seventh month, again, it's going to be shorter, right? And then the eighth month, the day becomes shorter, the night becomes longer. The ninth month becomes, the day becomes even shorter, and the night becomes longer. But then once you reach the 10th month, that month is gonna start, that's when, like, it's still winter, but that's when the sun is going to be, shine, like 1 hour longer. And it's going to be dark 1 hour shorter. So then when you get to the when you get to the 11th month, that's when the sun again becomes daily longer and the night becomes nightly shorter. So then once you get to the last month, the very last month, it again becomes longer. The day becomes longer and the night becomes shorter. And then it just repeats. After you get a full cycle of 1 year from Enoch, like, it just repeats. It just repeats. The day, once you get towards the middle of summer, the days become shorter and the nights become longer. And then once you get towards the last 3 months of winter, and this is very important, when you get to the last 3 months of winter, that's when the sun starts, the day becomes daily longer and the night becomes nightly shorter. And so why is that so important? Well, that's because you're coming to the end of the year. You're coming to the end of the year. And what month do we start like really seeing the sun staying out longer. Now, we don't necessarily notice it during the last 3 months of winter. We don't really notice it. But let me ask you, what month do we change our clocks forward? And why do we change our clocks forward? Now, I will, later, tell you the reason why we should not be doing that. But why do we move our clocks forward, and what month do we move our clocks forward? The month of March. March is the first month where we turn our clocks forward. Interesting. So why is that? Because the month of March is where we can clearly see the sun stays out later, longer, and the night becomes shorter. Now, technically, it already does that in the last 3 months of winter. We just don't recognize it because it's not that big of a change. Like, to the naked eye, if you're somebody that doesn't study this on a daily basis, you're not going to see the change happen in the last 3 months because it just like so what's interesting is the last 3 months of summer, the same thing happens, but you don't notice it until September, right? So basically the last 3 months of it being warm, you don't really notice that the sun is starting to go down earlier. Like, you don't really notice it until September, right? But it actually starts, so like the sun actually starts going down an hour early, like literally once you get to the third month. It starts, so keep that in mind. Also, keep in mind that we move the clocks forward in the month of March. Why? Because that's the first month that we notice that we see the sun start to stay out later, right? Because so that's, again, we don't see it in the last 3 months of winter, but when it becomes March, that's when we see it. So keep that in mind. And again, the days that you circled on your calendar are the days when it becomes daily longer or nightly shorter. That's the pattern of the sun. So then, if you were to take this calendar, see what I did? I made a calendar, and I get to the very end, and then here would be the new year. Like this down here, if you can see that, that would be the new year. And what number is circled? 13, right? The number 13. Well, look down here. What do you see? You see the number 13 is circled, right? So the first month of the year, you circled the number 13. And then the last month of the year, you circled 11. But then if you stick to the pattern and come around to a new year, well, guess what? You land exactly on the 13th day of the first month. Well, what day did we start? We started on the 13th day of the first month. We stuck to the pattern, the 30-30-31 pattern. We circled the 11th day of the very last month, and we stuck to that pattern, and we came around to the new year, and we come back around to the 13th day of that year. And you just cannot do that with the calendar that we use. So the calendar that we use today, you cannot use the pattern, the sun's pattern. It doesn't work. Like, it does not come back around to the 13th day of the first month. Another thing that we have wrong in our calendar is the simple fact that January is not the first month of the year. And here's why. The last 3 months of the year, the last 3 months of winter, right? If you stick to the pattern, so you have March, April, May. March, April, May, it's 3 months. 3 months, March, April, and May, 3 months of the sun doing what? Staying out longer. And the day becoming longer and the night becomes shorter for 3 months. Then you have June, July, and August that's where the day becomes shorter and the night becomes longer. And then you have So those would be summer months. Then you have September, October, and November. All three of those months, still the sun, the day is becoming shorter, and the night is becoming longer, right? September, October, November, you you know, the sun is still, the day is still becoming shorter, and the night is becoming longer. But then when you get to December, January, and February, that is when it's the coldest, right? Not just it's the coldest, but that's when the sun starts to, the day then starts to become longer and the night starts to become shorter. So then the pattern circles back around to March. The pattern circles back around to March, where that's where we start to see with our own eyes, that's where it circles back around to the time change, right? The moving the clocks forward, right? Which again, I don't necessarily believe in, but I'll get to that. I'm almost to that. So that's the reason why March is or should be the first of the year, not January. Because, like, if we follow this pattern, like, you cannot necessarily follow this pattern if you start with January. Like, if you start with January, you can't really, it's not going to work. So, and the months of the year has to follow the pattern of the sun. It has to follow the pattern of the sun. And with January being the first year of the month, it doesn't exactly, it's not following the pattern of, like, it's not following the pattern that is shown here in the book of Enoch. Because the book of Enoch actually, it tells you the sun's pattern. It tells you that pattern of, like it's telling us that there is a pattern of what months is daily longer and what months are daily shorter. And if you start with January as the first month, it doesn't, like, there's no way that's going to follow. It's not going to follow that pattern. So that's, again, that's why March has to be the first month, and February has to be the last month of the year. So now let's talk about a little bit about time. I know we are on 24 hours, right? We get that from the Egyptians. And I don't agree to how the Egyptians created time. That just does not make sense. I mean, if you think about it, that's pretty dumb. You stand in one place, and depending on where the sun is shining, your shadow. So if you're standing here and the sun is here over here, your shadow is going to be which direction? And then your shadow, you know. So that's what the Egyptians did, is they there's so many things wrong with that. I can't even begin to tell you what's wrong with that. First of all, how do they know that your shadow pointing this direction, going from here to here, is 1 hour? Like, your shadow pointing this direction, going from this direction to this direction, oh, that's just 1 hour. Well, what if that was 1 hour? What if your shadow going from here to here was an hour? Or what if your shadow going from here to here was an hour? See, do you see where I'm going with that? Like, you cannot say that your shadow facing this direction, going from this direction to this direction, oh, that symbols 1 hour. You cannot do that, because then I can say, well, no, that's wrong, because if your shadow is here, that symbols an hour, right? And then somebody else can be like, well, no, that's wrong. You go from this direction, and your shadow is pointed in front of you. Your shadow going behind you points, says, well, that's 1 hour. Anybody can take a shadow that is pointing in front and go, well, there's, and go, well, your shadow pointing this way is 1 hour, and your shadow pointing this way, well, that is another, that's 1 more hour, so now you have 2 hours. Your shadow pointing, behind you, that's another hour, that's 4. And then your shadow, you have 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? Like, that just, so who is to say that when your shadow pointing in front of you, going from the in front of you to your side, signifies that an hour has passed? Like, who, like, see how that doesn't make sense, that doesn't add up. Like, you can't say, well, my shadow is in front of me, and now my shadow is here, well, that signifies 1 hour. Because I can go, well, no, you're wrong, my shadow's in front of me and now it's over here, that signifies 1. Like, anybody can say, well, no, that signifies an hour. Like, so that's the reason why that is wrong. And the whole entire world believes that, And so let's look at the book of Enoch. What does the book of Enoch say? So the first month of the year, the sun, the day, you have 10 hours. 10 hours of sunlight, right? During the very first month, you have 10 full hours of sunlight before you have 8 hours of moonlight, right? So if you have 10 hours of sunlight and 8 hours of moonlight, how many hours is that? That's 18 hours. That's only 18 hours in one day, in one full day. So then when you get to April, the sun shines for 11 full hours. 11 full hours, and the moon shines for only 7. So you add 1 hour to the day, and you take away 1 hour of the night. And then you get to May, you add another hour to the day, you take 1 hour of the night away. And in the month of May, the sun is going to shine for a full 12 hours. The sun will be out for 12 hours in the month of May. 12 hours. And the moon is only going to be out 6 hours. Right? So then once you get to June, that's where you see the sun start to stay out less, and the moon stays out longer, right? And then it's going to continue, the sun is going to continue to stay out less and less and less each month, and the moon is going to stay out longer and longer for each month until you get to December. We're not going to notice it during December, January, and February. We're not really going to notice. We're not going to see it. But the sun is going to start to rise earlier. It's going to start to stay out later. And there's going to be more daylight. And the nighttime, well, it's not going to be that much. So you get to December to January, 1 hour. So let me back up to November. November to December, you add an hour of daylight, you subtract an hour of night. Then December to January, you add 1 hour of daylight, you subtract 1 hour of night, right? And then February, you add you add 1 hour of daylight, you subtract 1 hour of night. And then again, when you get to March, you're adding 1 hour, subtracting 1 hour. April, again, you're adding 1 hour, and you keep to that pattern. So here is another pattern. Like, you stick to that pattern, here's what's going to happen. So in the month of March, if we go by an 18-hour day, that means we have to create a 9-hour clock, not 12 hours. That means we have to go by a 9-hour clock because there are 18 hours in a day. And this is going to blow your mind. So, if we stick to all of the patterns that Enoch suggests, in the month of March, the sun will rise at 3 a.m. This is not using the 12-hour. So the reason why the 12-hour clock is wrong is not just because of what I showed you, but also, I mean, if you think about it, the 12-hour clock does not follow the sun's pattern. Why? Well, because when we get to the month of March, why is the reason we have to bring our clocks forward? Why do we need? So here's what I'm saying. If we were on a 9-hour clock, we would not have to move our clocks forward an hour. We would not have to move our clocks forward an hour because there would only be 9 hours instead of 12. Well, if we did not move our clocks forward in March, once we got to April, May, and June, the sunrise would be very, very early. So when we move our clocks forward 1 hour in March, think about it. We're actually adding 1 hour, before, sunset or whatever. But sunrise, if we stayed on standard time, sunrise would be very, very early. Like sunrise has early between 3:30, 4 o'clock. Now, I know that's a little off, but that's about where we would see sunrise. Is if we were to stay on standard time in the month of March, we would see the sun rising somewhere between, April, May, June. We would start to eventually see the sun rise around 3:30, 4 o'clock. And I know that's a little off, but what I'm showing you is that the sunrise would be very, very early. Nobody wants to wake up around 3:30, 4 o'clock. I don't want to wake up that early. Nobody wants to wake up that early. And so the government knows that we need to move the clocks forward because it doesn't make sense for people to get up 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. Like, it just doesn't make any sense for people to get up that early. And so that's the reason why our government moves, that's the reason why we move the clocks forward in the month of March. So that way the sunrise will still stay around somewhere between 5 and 6 a.m. And again, that's probably a little off, but you see where I'm going? It's like they know that it doesn't make any sense, and that's what I'm saying. So pay attention. It doesn't make sense. And our government knows that it doesn't make sense. So in your mind, write down it doesn't make sense, circle it, because that's important. It just does not make sense to be waking up that early. It just doesn't make sense. So that's another reason why the 12-hour clock is wrong. And if we did a 9-hour clock, it would make sense. If we used 9 hours instead of 12, this is what we get. In March, the sun would rise at 3 o'clock. During the month of April, the sun would rise at 2 o'clock. During the month of May, the sun would rise at 1 o'clock, and June, it would rise, it would go from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. So then from June to July, it would fall an hour, and it would rise at what time? 3 o'clock. Well, what time? So that's March, April, May. It goes from 3 to 1. And then when you get to 1, it goes from 2. It goes from 3 to 1. Then it goes from 1 to 3. In those 3 months. But then it goes from, because you get to August, the sun still rises, 1 hour, later. So the sun would not come out, like in the month of August, it would, sunrise would be 4 o'clock. But then August through February, the August through February, if we stick to the pattern here, August through February, the sun is going to rise at 4 o'clock. That's August through February. And then you circle back around to March. And now, like, you circle back around to March, and because the sun is now rises 1 hour early, it circles back around to 3 a.m. So from August to February, the sun rises at 4 a.m. in the morning, and then when you get to March, because it's daily longer, nightly shorter, well, now it comes, like, see how it circles back around? Well, during March, go to March all the way to March through August, when would sunset be? If we go from March all the way to August, sunset, like on a 9-hour clock, like sticking to these patterns, sticking to, you have 10 hours in March, you have 10 hours of daylight, 8 hours of, night. In April, 11 hours day, 7 hours night. In May, you have 12 hours of day, 6 hours night. June, you have 11 hours of day, 7 hours of night. July, you have 10 hours of daylight and 8 hours of night. And then August, you have 9 hours of daylight, 9 hours of, moonlight. So, when the sun rises in March at 3 o'clock a.m., you count 10 hours. You count 10 hours, and you're going to land at 4 o'clock p.m. So then you can take the 8 hours and add it, because in the month of March you have 10 hours of daylight, 8 hours of night. And so sun rises at 3 o'clock a.m. You add the 10 hours. The 10 hours would be 10 hours of daylight. And that's where you're going to come to sunset, 4 o'clock. So then you add 8 more hours from 4, and you're going to come back around to 3 o'clock. You can't do that on our clock that we use. You cannot do that. You cannot. It just does not work. So again, our clock does not follow how many hours of daylight versus how many hours of night there are. And if our clock did, there would be 9 hours. It would be a 9-hour clock, 18 hours total. 18 hours total, but there would be 9 hours. And you would start to see that there are 10 hours, daylight, 8 hours, in certain months, right? So I just described to you that from 3 a.m. counting 10 hours, you come to 4 o'clock p.m. Well, from March to August, if you stick to the pattern for each and every month, sunset would be at 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock p.m. Well, then, if you're sticking to the pattern, when you come to September, that's when sunset would be, when was sunrise in the very first month? So the very first month sunrise was 3 a.m., right? And, well, once you get to September, it's interesting. If we were to use a 9-hour clock, it's interesting how there's another pattern. Now, sunrise is 4 o'clock. From March to August, sunset is at 4 o'clock. And then now, in the month of September, sunrise is at 4 o'clock. The very first month, sunrise is at 3 a.m. When you get to September, sunset is at 3 p.m. Second month, sunrise 2 a.m. October, sunset 2 p.m. Third month, sunrise 1 a.m. When you get to November, sunset is at 1 p.m. When you get to December, sunset is at 2 p.m. Well, when you get to the month of June, sunrise is at 2 a.m. And then when you get to January, sunset is at 3. When you get to July, sunrise is at 3. And then when you get to February, sunset is at 4 p.m. And then you circle back around to March. And because it's daily longer, nightly shorter, you're back to sunset at 4, sunrise. It's all a pattern. This pattern is, so the sun has a pattern. The months of the year is supposed to be a pattern there, and it's supposed to follow the sun. And the time is also supposed to follow the sun's pattern. Does our calendar do that? No, it doesn't. I just showed you it doesn't do that. And our clocks, our 12-hour clock system that we use, doesn't follow the sun's pattern. Well, the calendar is supposed to follow the sun's pattern, and so is time. Time is supposed to follow the pattern of the sun. Well, how does the time that we use follow the pattern of the sun? It simply does not. So I know this was over 2 hours. This is 2.5 hours. For those of you that watched the full video, thank you. And hopefully I'll see you in the next video.